Hello and welcome, everyone. Chirping Zebras, episode 18. Mark Riley alongside Gino Binda Jr. Coming to you from AOA Studios in Beverly, the premier place to tape anything you need. And before we get into it and bring on our guest, we want to thank our sponsor, Referees Crease.
Which we're going international now, I think. We got a call from the Japan Pro League. Yes, exactly. And I think we're going to do some business over there with them. So
outstanding.
Stay tuned.
Well, your dad is the right height to go work over there.
Oh, yeah.
That's perfect. All right. So, with
that contract just got null and void. But other than that, here we go.
We want to get right into it with our guest tonight. He's a very special guest, one of our best friends in the business outside.
And our former boss.
Well, I was going to say, I've worked for him. I've worked with him. You've worked for him. You've worked with him. And he's one of our favorite people that, walks this rock that we're spinning on. Luke GALVIN.
Lukey.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on.
It's really exciting to be here.
It's really exciting. I couldn't wait to have you.
6 years as a trainee for the NHL. And much like my partner and I, should have been there, but
maybe
whatever happens, right?
Maybe not.
Yeah.
It's good experience.
Yeah. Good journey. Enjoy the journey, right?
Well, some of my favorite times was off the ice with you when we used to demo houses for your buddy Peter. And at the time, we were coaching the Boston Harbor Wolves, the old Matty O'Neill club in the Eastern Junior Hockey League. And horrifying everyone.
What a gong show those years were.
Yeah. Did you ever do any of our games?
No, I never did them. I definitely witnessed a few of them.
Yeah.
I used to go and watch anytime my father did games, or I always tag along and watch. Yeah. I remember I've seen you guys in action.
We got that gig because the late great Mike Odessa's kid backed out 2 weeks before.
That's right. They brought us on.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yep.
Who's that? Matt was supposed to take it, or?
Jeez.
They're doing great now.
I don't even remember, but I remember he backed out. Somebody helped me get in there because they didn't have anybody else. Then Rouse came on.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
We went 10-52. Still one of the best seasons ever. We had 8 college captains go from that team.
Yeah.
No kidding.
We started, our tryouts had like 14 players and 6 goalies.
And we went one goalie, I think.
We went through however many kids we went through. Mike Sweeney, remember? And Daigle. That ended up being our goalies.
Jason Daigle.
Hang on. Mike Sweeney?
Randolph, yeah.
Did he go on to Assumption? Mike Sweeney played at BC High, Mike Sweeney? No, that was when I was in high school. You guys weren't coaching then.
BC High.
What year was that? What year were you guys coaching then?
So, that's a good question.
Real good question.
So, 80.
Oh, not
88,
not even
89,
close.
91.
No,
somewhere
no.
in there.
Had to be after that. I graduated high school in 87.
No, because then I was down with the Wolves.
It had to be in the early 2000s, like 2005 or so.
If
Right
that's
around
the
there. 2004, 2002, something like that, maybe
Okay.
01.
if it's the early 2000s, that sounds about
You know
right.
who was one of
Yeah.
one of our favorite players was Ryan McGrath.
Oh, no kidding.
Who ended up over at
Ryan
Wentworth
McGrath.
for a while, and
He's
he's
at
running
Valley now. Yeah, he's
running
doing
the
really
Valley
well.
Warriors. Yeah.
He's running Valley.
He
So
doesn't
he
give
was-
us any credit, though.
He does if you catch him privately. Publicly, no
He's-
credit at all.
He's one of the best. He was one of the only ones that would give
what?
coaches for after the game. He would always give
Always
you the
take
beer.
care of
He would
it.
always take care. He'd always make sure that there's beer in the room for you. He was one of the only coaches that did it. When he was coaching at Wentworth, always beer in the room.
Yeah.
And a sandwich.
And a pizza.
Yep.
Or a sandwich, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I like hearing that.
Yeah. So you guys taught him well.
Yeah,
I don't think we were doing that back then. But
I don't think so.
no.
We had some fun though. One of my favorite stories to tell from those days was when we did the tournament in New York, and the bench. I think I've told you this one. The bench.
Biddeford.
Was it Biddeford?
That was Biddeford.
Oh, okay. I thought it was. I
That's
thought
a
it was New
barn.
York. The door from the bench was in the
They had
middle
the hangover
of the wall,
and the
They had
balconies hung over. Oh, I know the story you're going to tell. Yeah,
And
it's a good story.
and you got tossed,
No sense of humor.
Oh yeah, this
No.
is a good one. Yeah.
and you went out the door from the bench, and you were gone all of 5 seconds, and you came back in, and you stood behind me.
Told everybody to stand up. The whole bench.
Then the ref finally saw you, and he come over and he goes, I already threw him out, and I go, who threw who out?
Yeah.
And he goes, him. I already threw the coach out.
I ran
And
down the
turned
other
this
side
way,
of the bench.
and
Yeah.
he'd go this way.
Yeah.
It was like a scene from the Three Stooges, and this guy was getting so pissed. Oh, he was so. He's like, he's right there, and I go, I don't know what you're talking about. I think you're making stuff up.
Houdini.
All the kids were laughing. He was pissed.
We had
And-
another one up there. Remember with, and I caught a lot of shrapnel. Tim Taylor was up in the booth.
yeah.
Snowstorm. We started the game, whatever, with not enough players.
Yeah.
Matt Smith,
Yep.
the late,
Yep. Matt Smith. Yep.
was reffing.
Reffing, yeah.
Called a minor penalty. Didn't like it. We knew kids were coming. So I asked him a question. He didn't like the question. He said, if you say another word.
Yeah.
So I did.
You
I
did.
said another word. He gave me a penalty.
That's what we all went in the locker
We knew the kids were coming. We went in the locker room.
Yeah, we did.
He gave us the whatever time limit that
like
he wasn't
5
really
minutes or
supposed to.
whatever.
It was kind of on the,
Yeah.
the edge
3
of
or
that
whatever.
change.
Yeah.
Yep. So we went in the room. It was 6-0 at that time. I do remember that. And I remember, so we knew the rules. We went into the room. We took everybody off the bench. We took our 2 minutes. We came out at 1:50, lined up for the drop, and the game ended like 7-5. We didn't
Yeah.
win.
But
I
we
thought it
came
was
back.
a
Yeah.
great coaching move. Coach Taylor and whoever else was up there with him, they just
They were not happy.
told me I was a dink. Didn't know what I was doing. Blah, blah, blah. Whatever.
I thought it was brilliant.
Use the rule book.
All the kids were like, we're going to the locker room. Just go to the
Use
locker
the
room.
rule book.
Yeah.
Remember? Oh, but before we did the Victor Tikhonov, right? He was talking to us. Everybody turned around. Remember? Backs to the ice until he gave us. Yeah, I love those days.
You can torture referees.
These
No
people
one
don't
would
have a
know.
sense of humor anymore,
No,
though. You
no.
can't do that stuff.
Most of the stuff we did was, was in somewhat jest, but
All in fun, but it was
Yeah.
all within the rules.
all within the rules.
And people didn't have a sense of humor then.
Yeah.
And our delivery wasn't as crisp as it is now, for sure.
Yes.
We were a little more aggressive.
Well, they called the
days.
cops down in Bridgewater one game. 'Cause,
Bridgewater? That
Jimmy
was the Jimmy
Byers
Byers
was
game.
Oh, the Jimmy Byers
Jimmy
game.
Byers reference. Yeah.
Yeah, you tell that at the Eastern Mass Banquet all the time.
One of the
Yes.
best
That's a
puck
good one.
landings
I
you'll
love
ever
them both.
see.
Oh, it was outstanding. But to our defense, they, it was something that afterwards they admitted they messed up. They didn't see how it started in between periods. They're skating around for the warm up, and that was back when both teams skated the whole rink. I don't know why. And I ran out going watch the corner, and boom, we had a whole thing, and we come out shorthanded, and that did not sit well. And,
But then we were getting smoked.
yeah.
It was ugly. We tried to red Auerbach it and just, get our players going. And there should have been a penalty, I believe, right? And Jimmy didn't call it. And then we started giving it to him, and he took it the right way. So he skated to the farthest corner of the building.
yeah,
Because he was just laughing because we were yelling at him.
yeah.
But then finally, he said he had to do something. And then he gave the penalty, and then
He gave the bench.
then I
and
did
you,
the whole thing, and then we kept the pucks in a milk crate. Doug Sotart, like a couple years before, right, had done the barrel throw at Kansas City.
Yeah.
Right? That's where the idea came from. So we threw it,
Thing went-
out. Thing landed dead center and dead flat.
It
was
exploded.
an explosion. It was awesome.
like puck fireworks.
And then he threw me out. And then I learned from Pete Varney, who coached baseball at Brandeis, when you get thrown out of the game, you take your full 30 seconds.
Yeah, you got to get your money's worth.
So I took my full 30 seconds going across. The rink called the cops.
Well, no. What happened was he said he's got to leave, and you weren't leaving. And I said, if I get him off the bench, I just got a question for you. I just want to ask you a question. He said, you get him off the bench, I'll answer your question. So you did your walk right across the ice.
Yep.
And I go, okay. And he skated away. And that's when I snapped. And I started screaming across the ice. It took him way too long to throw me out. I mean, I went nuts. And then I went across the ice, but the rink called the cops. And by the time they got it, by the time we got there, we were in the restaurant.
We were all in the room just
drinking,
having
right?
beers.
Laugh.
Yeah. They were like,
What's
we heard
the
a problem.
problem?
There was a problem. We're like, yeah, that was us.
Yeah, no problem. We're good.
Yeah. Jimmy,
It's all
good
in
guy.
between the glass.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
He's one of the best.
I saw him last year at the banquet.
At the banquet,
and
yeah.
we had a good laugh about that. So, yeah, he was
That
one
was a
that
good team. I learned a lot doing that team.
Yeah, Frankie Trips is in the house. In case you hear him,
Doesn't
he's,
shut up.
He loves torturing Gino in the ride up, but well, maybe we'll get him on camera before it's over. But so I mean, and then one of my some of our favorite years was when you ran the ECAC officials, and
2006.
yep,
I liked that too.
That was a great year.
That job came open. Frank Murphy told me, we were talking just by happenstance, and he said, you don't have the balls to put your name in for that. So I just sent the guy a quick email. I didn't know Shaggy at the time, but I sent him the email, and he called me, Steve Hagwell.
Wow, Steve.
yeah, Steve Hagler.
I'm just putting him in
S.
Florida.
Hagwell, Shaggy. So he interviewed me. He had no luggage. We had a great conversation, and he gave me the gig. And I did tons of due diligence in advance of whatever the summer meeting was. I remember it very vividly.
That was up in Albany. Remember that?
I did tons of due diligence on the league. I had just by chance watched games the previous year, and they were brutal. Like the style of play was brutal. The games were brutal. I had enough experience in the American League and as a trainee. I thought I knew some stuff, and I'd been taught the right stuff. And then, although we're not best friends, we came up together as trainees, Wacom. So he was doing his first term then as the director. So I called him. So I had read the rule book, and it was very clear that, college wasn't actually using the rules. And so I called Wacom, and he walked me through. If you remember back then, that's when they got into
The standard, everything was a fucking
standard of
penalty.
play.
Yes.
And how, so my questions for him were, how did you get the league to bite on it? How did you get the support? And he told me really plainly, I didn't get the support. He said, I just told them it would make a difference. And he said, I walked out there and did it. The other guy I met with when I got that gig was, again, not best friends. He was longtime friends with my father, was Coach Cleary, Harvard.
I was going to say, you always talk to Cleary. Yes, Coach Cleary.
And I called him up, and we talked, and the summary of what he told me was, he said, whatever you do, he said, just do what you know is the right thing, because no matter what you do, they're going to fuck you either way. And he was 100% right.
Yes.
And the other guy I finally talked to was Bill Jones,
Jonesy.
which took like months to find him. He was like, that was like its own covert operation.
He was in a bunker somewhere.
And Bill said to me, he said, because I wanted him to come back and do something.
Yeah, he was great.
And he said, no. He said, I will only come back and help you if you make it to a second year, which I thought at the time was like, no problem. So we did a great presentation in the summer. A lot of what Steve Wacom taught me and told me, I was able to kind of sift through and utilize in talking to these coaches. And we explained, and I did it to Shaggy first. So, the idea was, hey, we're going to change the staff, and we're going to execute in a way that makes the game better. And how are we going to know that the game is better? We're going to know that because there's going to be more scoring. More scoring chances, more scoring. At the end, we totally got borne out. But as you guys will recall, because of the way I approached it, which was I watched every single game in its entirety, either in person or on tape. So that meant by the time the coach sent the clip reel, I had already seen the whole thing. And so,
That's what
they
I do.
send
I
their
do the
little
same
clip.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I already have the answers to the test before
But
they get
they
it.
would say, blah, 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 this has to happen, or this happened, and your guy did this. But then I would say, well, yeah, but what about the 12 seconds you chopped out of the clip
Right.
when this happened? What about that? So it took about a month, and then they all stopped calling me, which at the time I thought was good because they knew. And the other thing we did was the staff was great, right? So we went from what they usually did to a very narrow staff. So you were new then.
I was like 22 years old, 23 years old.
And
One
you
man
had-
system,
You
D1.
hadn't
was
done
awesome.
really any college, but
I did one season in Atlantic, and I only refereed like 3 games that season. I
Yeah.
lined that whole year.
so I had asked Terry Koharski to ref, and he told me he was gonna. And so I had kind of gone through the schedule and given him every big assignment because I thought he was going to be a change element for
He would have been great.
the way college
he would
just
have been
went
awesome.
on. And he's the best I've ever worked with on the ice. No offense.
No,
But
he's the best
really
I've ever worked with.
Super talented. And then he bailed right before the start. So I gave you all of his
games, yeah.
And you worked
It was
with
awesome.
Bob St. Lawrence
And Marty Demers.
the whole season. So that was one of the best ever, and one of the next guys coming up who was excellent.
Got my first bean pot. That was
And so we went through that whole season. I mean, there's so many things from that season. I always remember the game you did in Quinnipiac,
Which one was
Dartmouth.
that? That was at
it was
Dartmouth.
horrible.
It was at Dartmouth. Yes.
No, it was at Quinnipiac, and you were horrible, and everybody was horrible, and the game was horrible. And it ended 7-6, and Quinnipiac lost. And I remember I went down to the room, and I remember what I always remember about that game was you were skating in one of the last penalties you called, and you tripped over the blue line, and you fell. But your arm was
Still up.
I remember that.
You were on your ass and you spun into the corner and you landed back to the wall facing out. You called the penalty from a sitting position. It was just fantastic.
I got to get that clip.
You can't
Yeah.
even make that up. I have the tape still somewhere because I have all the tapes from that year. But I remember going down. Pecknold started saying something about the officials. And I'm like, look, the officials were horrible. But your goalie let in 5 tweeners. Let's talk about that. And he just took off and walked the other way. And we got along pretty good.
I had
you
a
know.
couple of bad ones.
That was a great season. I learned so much. I had great fun doing that. I mean, think about who was on the staff. We added you on the staff, which was fantastic. Dave Spanis,
Spanish, yeah.
Can I tell my Spanish story?
Redding, Simeon, Jimmy Briggs, like a lot of the American League guys that were in their peak prime. Young person like you at the time.
Derek Wall, he was great.
Yeah, we had the Whittemores.
It was
Yep.
it was unbelievable. And I forget, we only let go 2 guys during the year because they really made boner calls that really affected the game. But the playoffs were pissa. Everything about it was really good. And at the end, they said, you got to go. They told Shaggy, yeah, he's got to go. If you don't get rid of him, we're getting rid of you. So
That was it.
that was it. And then they brought in Stewie, and that was good until it wasn't. And Stewie, I mean, he's the generation that taught me.
Right.
He didn't do, on the ice-wise, I mean, he managed the crew and everything different, but on the ice-wise, he brought his reputation. That was the only thing I didn't really have. But that was a fantastic year. I love that.
That was a lot of fun.
And,
A lot of growing.
when you looked at the stats and everything like that, everything we promised. But what I learned was that the coaches, the coaches are about the coaches, and they're about their little kingdom. And that was always disturbing to me because they just weren't about the game, which really kind of pissed me off. But, I mean, I remember Chip. They did the vote at the end. We wanted them to vote on the playoffs, and they would only do a unanimous vote. and they voted Chip like last, unanimous vote. So we said, screw that. Everybody does their own vote, and you submit it by email to me, and I'll tabulate. So when we did that, Chip was in like the top 5 when they independently voted.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, Chip used to go. That guy, remember the guy George Roll?
Oh yeah, George Roll Clarkson. Yep.
Yeah.
He coached at Clarkson. I remember one weekend Chip went up there. They didn't like each other. I remember watching the tape, and every time Chip would call a penalty, George would shake his head. So I decided to send Chip up there immediately the next weekend, and I was like, Chip, if you want to stop at the medical store and get a neck brace and leave it on the neck with a little note, I said, I'm totally in support because George must have a hurt neck. But he wouldn't do it. But nah, that staff was great. I mean, that staff was great. That was a good time.
That was a lot of
Oh,
fun.
that was a lot of fun.
That's where we had your famous playoff.
Yeah.
I'm working on digitizing that CD, but I mean, that's one of my favorite things too. Quinnipiac and the France of college hockey at the time. I can't remember.
Wasn't it Clarkson?
Nope. It was where Nate coached.
Oh, Union.
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 Yes, the France of college hockey. Yes.
That's right. The France.
So
I got a Nate story too.
So they lost in overtime. And Nate was pissed. Nate lost. Union. And so I go down, and Nate's got the video queued up in the back of the rink where the room was. And so for the listening audience, right, there was a cross-check penalty called in overtime.
If we can get the video before this goes out, we're going to put it on. If you happen to get that digitized.
Well, I'll make that happen.
Yeah.
And so Nate's got it queued up. I go down. I stand next to him. He goes screaming. He's, whatever he says, he's saying. So go ahead, Nate, play it. So he plays it. I go, Nate, play it again. And he played it again. So we did that like 7 times. Play it again, Nate. Play it again. Play it again. Finally, he looks at me, and I go, Nate, every time you played that, it's a fucking cross-check. So that was that. It was a good call. It's still a good call. Every time I watch it,
Still a cross.
it's still a cross-check. That's every once in a while I text Riles.
Yeah.
It's still a cross-check.
Still a cross-check. I remember you coming in the room going, I told him, it's a cross-check. Great call. And he did not like it because it was overtime.
Right.
And it was nasty.
Hey, it sucks.
You
put the referee in that position.
I learned a lot that year. That was the year when, so I don't know what it's like now, but that was the year when there was however many leagues. So it was kind of like the 5 families. They had the big meeting in Denver.
Yep.
In the snowstorm.
Mm-hmm. And 5 families.
Yeah. Oh, they called a meeting of all the 5 families in Denver. And it was mostly because of what I was doing in the ECAC.
I remember that.
The teams would come out, and the standard was so different because in all the other leagues, mostly, they weren't calling anything different.
Right.
And we were. And they thought that was a competitive disadvantage, whatever. And I thought it was silly. I mean, they called this big meeting, and the whole objective of the meeting was for me to change my mind, which I really wasn't going to do. Senior gave me guidance, which was good guidance at the time. I don't think it would have changed the result of what they did, putting pressure on Shaggy to get rid of me. But, we loosened up the reins a little bit based on what Gene was kind of guiding me to do. And I mean, there's so many things happened that year. It's really incredible. It was only one season.
So coming out of that meeting, you said
that year went to the dogs.
yeah. So you sent the note out. You sent the big email out saying, "Hey, enough with the ticky tack calls." It's fucking dog.
I remember that.
Swear to God. So my Nate story was
that was the big phrase, ticky tack. The Dartmouth guy used to use that all the time.
yeah. So ticky tack. So I'm with Joe Ross, and Joe Ross is standing there at the bench, and he's got his back to Nate, and I'm talking to Nate, and Nate starts going, those knicky-knack those knick-knack calls you're making, blah, blah, blah. And Joe Ross just turns, knick-knacks? Those are on my grandmother's mantle. You're talking ticky-tack. We're out of here. Vroom. He just lit Nate up, and off he went. It was fucking awesome.
Yeah, that was a great season. I really enjoyed that gig. I learned a lot. I mean, the stuff we went through with the officials, and Alex Dell was on that staff still. Think about Alex Dell. He went through like every commissioner ever.
Alex Dell. Who was John? Was it John Murphy from Buffalo?
John Murphy was on that staff.
Yep, he was
Scott
great.
Hansen was on that staff.
Scott was good.
Move to the mic.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're
Dave Dave Hansen was on there for a little bit.
Dave
A little
Hansen.
bit, yeah. He
Yep.
didn't
Little
care
bit.
for the whole thing, so he went his own way.
I got the Florida gig because of that.
Florida was great. You were sick, as I remember.
Yeah, I was
Sick as a dog.
Yeah, I had a couple of crackers before the game. It was coming out of both ends. It was not pleasant. I slept all day, and I just got myself ready for the game. Like I always tell people, because of that experience, I go work sick. I go work with a little cold. If you can fight through it. If like you're deathly ill, then obviously you can't. But if you got the sniffles or whatever, go work sick. Because if you have a big game, so I had the NCAAs one time. I had the same thing happen, and I got myself prepared for that game because I went through it. And you just kind of how did the basketball player play the other night? He had the shivels. He's a professional. He's an athlete.
I
He's
agree
gonna
with that.
he's
I
gonna
went
make sure
through
he
that
does
in the American League, Baltimore, when they still had a team. 102, they had like a little electric heater in the thing.
Yeah.
I was like in a ball. I don't think I called any penalties, but I worked because Lewis was coming.
Yeah.
And I can't bail.
Brian Lewis was awesome to
I loved Brian Lewis.
work for.
I only had a bail on one game. I think I've told the story in Sioux City, Iowa. I got a thing called pharyngitis. And it's, to this day, I still don't know what it was. But I had like a 104 temp, and Chris Rooney was the backup official for that. It was a playoff game. And we drove out from Iowa, and I was in the passenger seat, passed out the whole time, sweating. And I got to the rink. I couldn't even barely walk. I was delirious. And he ended up reffing the game. And then we went to the hospital, and I pretended to be him. And because I didn't have health insurance, and he did. So we went in.
You
and
could get away with that then.
Well, back then, it was funny because the girl took the
digital.
card, and and then all of a sudden she threw a curveball. She said, "What's your social security number?" And I go, "You tell her, I can't." And he belts it off, and she looked at him, and he goes, "We're real close." And the doc gave me a shot in the ass. I was up
Those
in.
were the days.
I think I had some beers that night. I was fine, but yeah, that was hilarious. Sioux City with Dave Lurie as the coach,
Okay.
whose son is now playing for the Bruins.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Mason.
Mason Lurie for the Bruins, the defenseman. His dad,
His dad was the
Dave,
coach.
was the coach in Sioux City, Iowa, when I was out there in the USHL. So
another story from that season, get back to the Dave Spanish story. Do you remember the game that we were calling you about, me and Derek Waller in it? It's at Yale Cornell. And Cornell the fans come marching in warm-ups with the band playing, and they circle the whole building, and they come circling in, sold out, banged out crowd. We're about a half hour going out for warm-ups, and Spanish isn't there yet. I'm like, all right, he'll be there, whatever. Still not there. We call you, and we're like, hey, Dave's not there. You get on the horn with Dave. He was at a fucking party. He thought the game was the following week. So Luke goes, hey, he's on his way. Just go out and start the game 1-1. So we do the first period. We remember that game? We had spears. We had fights. Like, I was throwing like, Schaefer, threatened me at one point. Like, I was like, did you just threaten me to run their goalie? I go, because that's going to be bad for you, because if you get a goaltender penalty, I go, tack 2 more on. And he was like, you can't do that. I go, watch me. And I skated away. And I had 3 or 4 majors. We had a fight. And so there was a situation, and I never met the guy in my life. And he comes, we had a scrum. And so it was a dead ball, and all of a sudden this little guy comes flying on the ice. He has that very deep voice. And he's like, the scrum's going on, all I hear is, hey, and I'm like, hey, who are you? Are you Spanish? He's like, yeah. I'm like, hey, Gino Binder, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
He had an American League shirt on.
Yep.
The sticker, the helmet, everything was like, oh, discombobulated, his shirt's unbuckled. It was awesome.
That staff took total control away from the coaches. They hated that.
That was so good.
That was the thing. They didn't like that.
No, they didn't
They
like
did not
that.
like that at all. Because
Who was the guy that coached at Yale? Is
That
he
was
still
Keith. That was the game. He banged on the fucking boards. I didn't see it. I thought it was like players banging on the boards, but it was him.
there? Were you working with when Frank got hurt?
No. Well, Frank did get hurt, but I went
on?
And you went on the ice. Yes, that wasn't my game.
And the guy with the hair that was at RPI.
Oh, Seth Abbott.
Seth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Best hair in college hockey.
I told him that during
Yeah.
the game.
Oh, yeah.
He
He
was started feeding me, and I looked up. I
Awesome.
go, "You have the best hair in all of college hockey." And I think I was with the Whittemores.
I used to
And he
always-
looked at Todd. He went, "What the fuck does that mean? What does that have
Means
to
what
do
it
with
means.
anything?"
It means what it
Thanks,
means.
I think
Yeah,
he
that
said
was
he's got some pretty good hair. That means something.
I mean, so many things happened that season. Everybody was freaked out that I jumped on. I used not my equipment. I forget who was working that game, but Frank got hurt. He broke a rib.
That's right. Was that Yale?
Jimmy Briggs, maybe, I think. And
Maybe Simeon or Redden?
I don't remember who else was working, but it was fun to get out there. Everybody was horrified. But
Man, the more you start peeling the layers, like Joe Ross, like all those names, like dude, that was a great.
the
great
staff was tremendous. I
Great
mean,
year.
Derek Sylvester up in Rochester,
yeah.
big Sly.
he was like
Yeah.
Americanized Dave Cassidy. Did you ever work with Dave Cassidy?
No, but he was on that Florida game with me when I got sick. Yeah,
Dave Cassidy's one of the best linesmen I ever got to work with. John Brown being the best. John Brown, Medway, Wellesley High School. John
Brownie,
Brown.
yeah.
right.
And Cassidy, number 2, and Lyle Seitz, number 3.
Lyle Seitz.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. He had a pretty long.
Lyle had a
in the
great
NHL.
career.
Yeah.
I like to think I helped him. We went to the zoo, San Diego Zoo. And we were.
What the fuck?
Yeah. We were. He was like
Went
a
to the
40-40 guy, and I was the trainee, and we were waiting to do playoffs in San Diego. So I took him to the zoo. He was a young kid.
It's a good zoo.
I think it got him.
Fantastic zoo.
I think he got him pointed in the right direction. I still have pictures of the flamingos, the whole thing. Lyle had hair then. Oh yeah, that was good stuff.
The San Diego Zoo is a great zoo. It's kind of like Franklin Park, only different.
Yeah.
And
Only just. Yeah.
Animals.
well,
Animals.
the animals in the San Diego Zoo are walking around like we're at the San Diego Zoo.
Like
you know.
They're happy to be
There's
there.
like one zebra there.
Then you go to Franklin Park, and the zebra's a little nervous. He's going to end up as the main course at a barbecue on Geneva Ave. So it's a little different.
Yeah, that was a good year. That was 2006, 2007. Then Stewie took over.
Yeah.
I had as much action in 1 year as Stewie had in 12, I think, though.
Yeah, you had a lot of action.
Oh yeah.
And then Kevin Collins supervised. Remember that game down in Brown? Yep.
I love that. That
Yep.
was career changing.
That was career
I
changing.
totally believe that was career changing.
You told that story.
I
I
told
think
the story
last
week.
episode.
Oh,
Yeah.
you did? Oh, yeah.
Him coming in, kicking the barrel.
I love that story. And in fact, I mean, it just says a lot of stuff. But sitting there with him, he was so angry.
Oh, I know.
He was so angry. We were watching the first period, and he was so angry he was going to leave. I'm like, dude, you can't leave. Just go rip him. Like, you got to go shred him. And he didn't want to, but he did. That happened again when you were in the American League. Dan McCourt, never forget it. We were sitting up in the corner at Hartford.
Yep.
And I love Dan
That's
McCourt.
right.
He's a good dude, but he wasn't paying attention.
No.
He paid attention enough to know that you weren't doing what you should do. You weren't being as good as you could be. And he was like, I'm leaving. I'm like, you can't leave. Like, this guy's good. You got to go and light him up. And he did that differently. He didn't like yell and scream, but I remember he did that, which that happened 2 times. I mean, think about how many times that probably happens to guys. That's career changing. Some guy's there that supervising. He thinks you stink in that 3 minutes that he paid attention. And then that's how they remember you.
That doesn't
That's right.
I mean, when we supervise now, it's a little different in that. The younger guys now, you can't go in and kick barrels and stuff because it's just
You don't
a
have to
different
kick
world.
barrels, but I haven't done that many recently, but when I do go for you, and in the past when I was doing it, I remember, it's pre-COVID when I was doing college for you, but As the person that was just going in and talking to guys about the game, but they didn't want to listen.
No, they just want.
That's the biggest problem.
You lit me up.
Well,
We down
remember
the
that,
Cape.
down the Cape.
We did a game. We were with Lemon. AJ Potvin
Lemon.
was the other referee, and the first period, I admit it. I was out there. I didn't want to be there. It actually changed my trajectory from that moment. This was like I don't know how many years.
It was a few years ago.
A few years ago,
Yeah.
and
remember
I'm
that.
out there, and I really didn't give a fuck. I'll be honest.
mailed it in.
And he came in the locker room and just fucking lit me up. And it was great because the three young guys we were with, Potvin, I forget the two linesmen, they were kind of like, holy shit. And you left and I go, he's right.
Yeah.
And I completely changed the way
We went out
I
to eat
worked.
after with those guys.
We went
too.
out to eat.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Yeah. But
And then we talked for like hours.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Those are
But
that's
you
the best.
came in and you were
working
like,
with
you want to be here? And I go, yeah. No, you don't.
That's
you're
like
not
the kids
skating,
we
you're
worked
not-
with. The only game I did with you maybe last year, right? Benedetto's kid.
Oh, Zach.
Tim
Zach,
Benedetto.
he's gonna be good.
Yeah, he's good.
He's gonna be really good.
But
Remember?
yeah,
And they were willing to listen.
yes.
So we let them do their thing like the first half of the first period. And then we started talking to them within the period, and they were willing to listen. And of course, we were doing our thing. But by the end of the game, their whole face-off standard, they had modified their whole face-off standard where they went from really not being in control of the players to being in total control of the players and the game flow.
The game completely
awesome.
changed. It was so
Because
cool.
they listened.
Right.
It was so cool.
It was really cool.
Face-offs, they run the whole game. Like if you're stalling and delaying, it's just like resetting constantly.
Oh, there's
Especially
no
in
control.
juniors.
If you're taking a minute and a half on draws, like what the fuck are we doing?
That was
Well,
the Cyclones guy that got mad
The
at me.
Cyclones guy got mad, and
They're always mad.
it was Utica at the Cyclones.
We called the
And-
penalty, and the guy said whatever he said, and then I went over to try and explain it to him.
The kid threatened to kill someone or something. That's when you threw
There's
him
your
in the
problem.
box.
You don't explain mine.
And I went over to talk to the senior gentleman who was coaching the team, and he proceeded to tell me that he didn't care what I had to say because we were horrible and we didn't know what we were doing anyways.
And I
So
believe he told you sucked for a long time.
I proceeded to tell him, actually, I didn't tell him anything. I proceeded to ask him, since we weren't going to talk about the call.
That was wait a minute. The call was there was a fight.
Yeah, the kid
The
threatened
first
his
fight,
life.
there was a scrum, and no one went to the bench. So the second time, and I said, I'm everyone's getting 10. And the next one, I gave all 8 kids a 10, and we sat them all in the
remember that.
box, and
Yeah,
it was
that was
all
beautiful.
confusion, this and that, and and they were like, "Who's out in the ice?" And that's when he got into it with you.
And he expressed himself, so I asked him if he could explain why his team hadn't connected on 3 consecutive passes in a period and a half.
He fucking snapped.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I was worried because I was reffing for you,
Yeah.
and I was worried. But we watched the videotape, and I got to tell you, on videotape, you can't even tell.
I don't know. My father would disagree with that.
No, the only guy you can see going nuts on the videotape
It's him. Yeah.
was
the guy.
was the coach.
No.
the referees, as achy as we felt, we looked as good as ever.
Yeah. I even said, I said to,
Positionally
I remember
correct.
The assistant comes down and he goes, "Are we getting a penalty?" I go, "I don't think I can bench you for that." But then they went to a shootout. The game went to a shootout, so I go over to the
Yeah.
bench and I said to the assistant, the big guy, he's really, they're both nice guys, but it just got into it, right? And I go, "Who's your 3 shooters?" And he goes, "Hey, I'm the head coach here." I said, "Well, you yell a lot, and I'm kind of afraid that you're gonna start yelling at me." So I figured I'd talk to the sand guy, and he actually smiled. He smiled, but it wasn't as fun as the coach's re-education program game we had.
We should
That was fun.
we should zoom Sorella in.
Coach's re-education.
That would be funny sometime because I never talked to him before or since, really. And honestly, I don't know him that well. I was not a fan when he was in Cromwell.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I was not a fan.
He was young then. Yeah.
Yeah, he was young, but I do remember that season. It was a few seasons ago now, but I remember I watched him just torch these young dudes.
And nobody does
Newington. And I remember, I was pissed. I was pissed watching it. And then I went in and talked to the kids in the room. What's the kid's name? The third. He's pretty good. Was doing a lot of games for you.
Ron Morello?
Yes.
Morello, yeah. He's really good.
He was one of the kids there. And
top 4 Atlantic this year.
I was talking to them, and they just didn't really know. They were so used to it. It's kind of like PTSD.
Well, that's what it is. They're
so
say,
used to
that's
it.
what
It was
it is.
no
Oh,
big
that's
deal.
what he does. That's
That's
him.
what he does.
And I'm like, well, why do you let him get away with it? To me, it's like a game. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
when he does this, I'm doing this. When he does this, I'm gonna you got to counteract to whatever the fuck he's doing.
Yeah.
But what's
to
the
stay
difference,
in
though?
charge.
Like, I remember years ago, I forget the guy's name. He coached the Hartford Whalers at the time. And he was just awful. Great coach.
Mm-hmm.
Just no control of
Verbal diarrhea.
verbal.
Yeah.
And I remember I had him 2 weekends in a row. The first weekend, he got ejected about halfway through the game. The next weekend I was there, I was actually 4 minutes late on the ice. I was on the ice for 2 minutes. So I'm 4 minutes late, so they're into the game. I was on the ice for 2 minutes, and we had to eject him for some nastiness. And it just makes me wonder, listening to all the kids, what's different that people accept that? Because when I was a young kid, I didn't accept that, and I didn't always know how to handle it with the rule book. I remember I used to try and handle it a lot by verbally sparring with the adult at the time, but it seems like now it's just like wickedly out of control. And that game we did, the re-education game, was fantastic because we didn't say anything to anybody, and it was like somebody sprayed something in the air, because as soon as we entered the building to get dressed an hour and a half before, you could just see everybody knew something weird was going on.
It's true. It's true.
You show up with the Jofa lid.
He had the Jofa. I had the Nike bucket
Yeah, but they
on.
weren't out of the bag yet. We were just two dudes walking in to
That's
do
right.
the game.
But when
that's
we
true.
went out,
People could
remember
tell
DeCap
something
asked,
was going
who
on.
were we lining with? The young kid that we were lining with.
Oh, the two young kids
Two
were
young
fantastic.
kids. They were fantastic.
Yeah.
And DeCap was the coach of the Rangers.
Yep.
And he said, what's going on? And we had told him, and he goes, a couple supervisors want to work together. I don't know.
That was a fantastic game.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Still went into overtime. One team had like 25 power plays. The other team had 4, and we went to a shootout.
It was great.
It was awesome.
And in the overtime, it was like
And I watched the video, and we didn't make up one penalty.
No, they're all
one penalty.
penalties.
They were all penalties, and we called it tight. We called it like, and the one team
Yeah.
got it until they didn't. In the third period, they started taking
And I
some
still
penalties.
get every meeting. He always throws that trump card out. He goes, "Hey, listen, I did my penance." And then so anytime he wants to get something off his thing, like he's like, "Oh, I got this on you." I'm like,
Well,
"You
the
can't
one-
keep pulling that card out." It was 3-4 years ago.
But
Like,
there
I
was-
wasn't even
there-
charged then. It was
There was
my
like
father.
2 minutes left. It was not even a minute and a half left, and I called the penalty, like an elbow or something. It was nasty, right?
Yeah.
So now we're going into overtime, 5-on-4, and of course he can't help himself, so we bench him going into overtime. So it's 5-on-3, and I think they won in the shootout. I think his team won in the shootout.
Yeah, they did.
And it was like literally 25, 26 penalties to 4. But all there, we didn't make up one of them.
I gave him a re-education program too when I was in the program working for the USHL. I was living in Omaha, and so I came home for Christmas break. Me and Graber went up. Kevin Graber go up to.
He started that 2006 year, and he was excellent.
Yep,
Excellent.
and he's still working there. So
He could skate like a.
he could fly. Yeah. He was a little dude can motor. Never gets hung over too. That always bothered me.
Some people have that skill.
So we went up to Binghamton, and we brought our girlfriends with us, and we had a weekend over Christmas break, right? And I ref one line one, so I refereed the second game, and Sorella dumped the fucking bench on purpose. And so I had a line brawl that he fucking because he was pissed at me, yelling and screaming, boom, boom. And I knew I had him coming in January, so I would like Brand was like, hey, I'm gonna send you home for a trip, do a swing, and then you're back out here for the rest of the season. So I go home in Walpole, And, my father's there, everyone's there, all family's there, right? So the first period, he was down 5-on-3 the whole fucking first period. And so in Walpole, the door's down the far end at the hash mark. So I go on the other side of the red line, and he could walk around. He doesn't have to go on the ice. He could walk around or just go right down to the hash mark. So I position myself on the far blue line on the other side. So he walks up to the red line, walks across, starts mother effing me, looks up at my father, starts yelling at him. So I fucking tee him up.
Awesome.
I never threw him out. I just kept teeing him up. I probably benched him 2 or 3 times that game.
That's what we did that night.
Yeah, I never threw him out, and he waved the white flag like halfway through the second period, and then the rest of the game was great after that. And then we had a couple of beers afterwards, and we hashed it out.
He's a good guy.
And me and him have been great since. Like, I see him, big hug and kiss, and he was just texting me a couple days ago.
Yeah.
He was down in New Jersey having a time.
Well, I always got along. I always got along with him. And one of the first game I did, we didn't know each other, right? Yeah. So I call a penalty, and next one, and he called me over, and I said, "Hey, coach, from my angle, that was a trip, right?"
He's so
and
good, yeah.
Like the third time he calls me over, I'm not even at the bench. He goes, "Let me guess, from your angle." I go, "You're a quick learner." We had a laugh, and that was it, and we got along fine. Yeah. And I remember that game. He was like,
He's got to lay the law down.
Yeah.
Like Sean Tremblay was another one, right? Like Peter Masters was another one. Like if you don't toe the line, if you don't let them know where the line is, that given night, they own you.
Yeah.
Because I've had games where I've owned them, and there's games where they've owned me. Yeah. And I'm like, fuck, like you just can't get out of that once you let them get away with something, or you mess up and you can't catch back up. But the second you warn Sean Tremblay, he won't say another word the rest of the game. Hey, Sean, or if he wants to get benched, he will. Yeah. Right? And he'll let you know, and he'll do it. So I've had both situations where he would light me up, and I go, "Sean, that's enough. I'm done with your lip. You said your piece. That's it. Zip it." And then he'll be done. Yeah. Or he'll go, "You're no good." Rah, rah, rah. And he'll just keep going. He'll give that big yelling at you, and then you just tee him up, and then he doesn't say another word because that's what he wanted.
I would say, I know when I was coaching at Thayer, and when we coached, although when we coached together, it was different. It was like from the San Diego Zoo, but we a good coach is gonna push however far you let them push, right? And they're going to keep pushing until, and if you're not going to push back, well, then fuck it. I'm going to push. Like, I don't know how many times when, you're not supposed to change on the icing, right, with the preps, I'd dump my fucking 5 guys.
Oh, dude.
And they'd all be, and they'd be like, oh, I don't remember who was on the, I was a complete asshole. Yeah. I should have got benched. Right. But they let me do it, so I kept doing it. And every time there was an icing, I'd say,
please stop doing that, coach?
My boys.
Say, please stop doing
the
that?
lessons are
my
the
boys
same,
would
though.
Go. My boys would go.
Every level. When I was doing the trainee stuff.
Yep.
Gary Unger, remember? The Iron Man before Doug Jarvis?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was coaching Phoenix. And so it's 3-man then, right? Line change, referee does the line change, and then you're deep. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't good at the line change for some reason. It was just like a difficult thing. He was the guy that taught me. So he was a born-again Christian then also, which was always funny because his team was working very hard to get him to swear. I remember that. And so I remember the game. He would, you do your deal with the line change, whatever. As soon as I put my head down, you're next to the goal frame.
Yep.
They're getting ready for the drop. I would just look down, like for a second. He'd have a line change ready to roll. He would just make chop suey out of the whole thing. And I finally figured it out.
Yeah.
So the next stoppage, same thing. But he didn't know I figured it out. So got the pen. He did the same thing, called the penalty. He swore. No. That's why I remember it. He dropped the F-bomb. All the players laughed, but he was laughing.
Yeah.
But he's like, it took you long enough. And then, so it's the same thing everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean,
Brad May did it to me in Grand Rapids.
If you don't stop them, they're just going to take what you give them. I mean, honestly, way back when, we weren't as polished, but that's kind of the same thing we were doing.
Oh yeah, 100%. And it's something that you have to learn. I think at some point, and I don't know why it takes longer now for some of the younger kids to
confidence.
learn that you know, it's okay to say, well, yeah, it does come down to confidence, it comes down to experience,
Game count and actually
game
going
count,
through it, because if you don't get
and
your
going through it.
experience, you're not gonna have that at the younger levels.
Right.
Like,
But it's interesting because when you guys started doing these, you had Grav on. So I did my first high school game with Grav.
I love Graf.
And then
It's the best.
shortly after that, so Brownie and I got into Hockey East. So we're working with Grav, Turkey, our folks
that was
often
his folks,
imitated,
yeah.
never duplicated. Like this whole generation of people, Scott Levitt, USA Hockey was Peter McGrath, Bill Jones, John Jones, Milt Kaufman, right? All these people.
Kaufman, yeah.
So I think about it a lot. So, and then when I got in the American League, I was horrible. I'm still not sure why I got in when I got in, but the first year I got in, I was doing lines and refereeing. I did my first game with Brian Murphy.
No shit.
Brian Murphy spent that whole game telling everybody to leave me alone. Like, totally wouldn't let me take any shrapnel from anybody. It was awesome. And then that whole generation of guys that I worked with, the local guys, Billy Morrissey, Butova, Marty,
Marty's awesome. We're getting him on.
John Malinowski, Brewster, like all these dudes.
Brewster.
Like, it's totally a different mentality. Harry Amian used to scare the shit out of me. Like, some guys didn't wear helmets then. You ever know Harry?
No, I don't know him.
Harry
Some
was
of these
from
names are going
Albany.
over- yeah, they
Harry
are going
scared the
over
shit
head.
out of me. He just had this look on his face like. But the one thing I thought was always so different was when Brownie and I came up, we wanted to know what all those guys, Marty, I mean, even locally, your father, Marty McDonough, Jimmy Doyle, like these guys all, like these are all the people that they gave us shit. They taught us shit.
Yep.
The giving us shit was part of.
Everybody had a nickname. Everybody, yeah.
Yes, it was
yeah.
totally different. I
We got
mean,
their balls busted.
I
yeah.
remember
Yeah.
on one of your calls, everybody was whining about some shit. I remember the first junior game, the old New England Junior League. It was like right at the end. Brownie and I were working lines. There was a brawl that went into the stands, like Rangers Bruins, like that kind of
Yeah,
brawl.
we got hit.
Brownie and I climbed up. We didn't know. We climbed up
went
into
in.
the stands, and we were trying to break up play. Like, it's just totally different now, and I just don't think people. I don't think they want to learn.
They don't
And if
have
you
to get
extrapolate
better.
forward to what we started going through in the American League with all these guys coming in who were former player, whatever that means, and the idea, which is really striking because I don't know how Steve Wacom would arrive there. Steve Wacom, I don't know, like his early days, but he came up the same way everybody else did. You worked all the leagues, you earned your way up, blah, blah, blah. You have all this experience. And now you got guys coming in doing their first American League game just because they played somewhere.
Right.
You're seeing it now.
Oh,
Oh,
you
yeah.
get the
You're seeing it in the
results
big leagues. I mean, the only, Dean Morton, Wes, Runes,
Danny O'Rourke.
O'Rourke, the guy that just came back who's been around for like 800 years, right?
now. Is it Kazari?
Kazari.
Yeah.
Kazari.
I mean, those guys, you can tell on TV before you ever see their number when they're working.
Right.
Because they just have a way.
Yeah.
And they operate in a certain way. And you can tell who all the new guys are because they're in the wrong place at the wrong time for the wrong reason.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys that I worked with in the American League, they didn't care who you were. They didn't ask you any questions. And that seems to be all the way down. So confidence, but I don't think people are learning either because, I mean, I don't know about you guys. When I started reffing, you didn't get paid. It was, you just did the games because you wanted to do the games.
Right. Everybody's like, oh, what do I get paid? What's the mileage? Oh, I got to drive 75 miles for that junior game? I'm like, that's what the game is.
Or they don't want to do the junior.
Oh, I got to
game.
go down the Cape. Oh, I got to do this.
I mean, I don't understand that either. Like, I think I asked you early in the year, you were doing a game somewhere. I remember when Brownie and I were coming up. If Brownie had a game that I wanted to work, I would go to the game with him. I would tell his partner, you keep the money, I'm going to work. Because because I was used to doing games for free. So I didn't care. I just wanted to work because we were already doing our thing and trying to get where we wanted to go. And I don't know. I don't see that happening now. It's a different environment for sure, but
here's a kid that got noticed. Kid Reddick. He's in the East Coast League. And speaking of that tune,
is that the dude I yelled at?
I don't think
The American League guy?
No, he's in the East Coast League. No, that was that's another kid. That was
That was funny.
Yeah. I talked to Bird about that down.
It was accidentally funny.
Yeah, it was.
One of the problems with this whole situation now is that there's too much hockey.
Right.
So back in the day, you could have veterans working with new guys, right? You could have the veterans wouldn't mind going and doing a peewee set because they were giving back, right? Now there's just so much freaking hockey that you need the veterans to do the higher level games, and that leaves no one to go and work and work with the younger.
Maybe, but the problem of too much hockey, it's not really a problem. It just is what it is, number one. Number two, guys giving back. Honestly, one of the reasons I stopped doing the juniors, like supervising, is because nobody gives a shit what I had to say.
No, nobody wants to get better.
They don't care.
They don't have to get better. And
Right.
it drives me nuts.
So there's the odd kids that you run into, but you said something before, which of course always takes me back to Kevin Curtis.
Yes.
Kevin Curtis. I didn't know this kid. I went to a USA thing. He was at Fairfield.
Yeah.
I go to the USA thing. Derek Wall's running it, like Otis, like accomplished guys. He's just skating around doing the stupid USA thing. He's got his suit on. He looks legit. I swear to God, there was a freaking halo over this dude. I'm like, Derek, who is this guy? He's like, I don't know. Like, they didn't see the halo. Like, they just didn't see it. So I go skate next to him, and I start asking him, like, questions that should horrify him, right? We're skating around in the circle. He never skips a beat. He gives answers to every question. I love this dude. Like, we talked a little more afterwards. There was a guy, I forget his name. He doesn't do it anymore. He was from Jersey, and he was scheduling some junior leagues. I can't remember his name, but I sent him an email, and I'm like, this kid's good. He should be a referee. I didn't think he was going to give him a game like 3 days later. So he threw on a game up in New Hampshire. So I drove up to watch at the time.
Yep.
I don't know. It's probably 10 years ago or more. Probably.
Yeah, probably more, yeah.
So, I mean, he's just in college. He's a senior in college. He stopped playing the club team. I go up there. I figure the game's 3 hours. The game's not yet 2 hours old, and there's 10 minutes left. I knew right then. I'm like, so I watched him. He had no idea how to do anything except he had this
Manage the people.
He had this presence about him that you can't teach people. Does it matter that his dad was a Quincy detective for 30 years? 100%. All that stuff just kind of, I mean, that kid was freaking, he was like the golden child.
He was good.
I'm still pissed that he quit.
National championship. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was so good. So to your point, I mean, I've always thought, especially after the year of watching all the college games, I think guys, I don't think it's any different than players. There's a lot of guys who are just average, and then there's guys that have this different thing. Where does that come from?
Well, we talked about back in the day when you had McCreary and you had Van Massenhoven and Andy Van Helmont and Kerry Fraser and Paul Stewart. There were personalities. Like when they were on the ice, you knew what you were going to get. When they walked in the building, you knew, right?
Turkey. Brownie and I used to sit up at Conti Forum and watch Turkey and our folks. I swear to God, we would sit up there. I remember the first year we started doing it, we would rip them to shreds. We didn't know them. I didn't know them. Brownie probably didn't do any ripping. It was probably just me. Because Brownie was into baseball, and he would have known Turkey then. So, but we thought we were good. We thought we should be there. What are these old fuckers doing there, right? And then, then we got in. And, I mean, is there a better guy than Turkey McBride
No.
and Richie Folk? I mean, they're the two best examples I remember because they managed the people. John Ashley, when he used to supervise, he would say, call the penalty, find the rule later.
Right.
I love that. That's what they did.
Yeah.
They would manage the people. They would manage the game. They didn't look. They were very Mike Greenwell in left field, but they were so good.
Right.
Where's that?
Yeah. Well, I think
That's when Murph was in. Like, he was in that crowd. He got in
Yep.
just before. I mean,
Hey, he started in Hockey East. Yeah.
yeah, he started Hockey East, and I'm sure those guys have an impact on how he learned. I never asked him, but how could they not?
Right. That's a good point.
Some of those guys were just so good. And it's a different standard now. Nobody that we're dealing with would look at them and go, oh, they're so good. And they would be so wrong.
Like I look at, I got the fortune, was very fortunate to work with Scott Hansen in Hockey East, and he's a veteran, like one of the best
Artist.
Yes,
Artist.
one of the best referees I've worked with. Just the way he talk about fucking confidence, like that guy got confidence through the roof, and
So good.
yeah, his demeanor about him, his penalty selection, just the and having that veteran presence, like the coaches know what they get, and all the coaches knew the hell who he was. So like right there, it's like working with Terry Kohaski in the American League. Like it's instant respect. Like you already know who this guy is.
Trust.
Yeah,
Chris
trust,
Rooney,
right.
same thing. Trust.
Yeah.
Every level. Since Chris started refereeing, he has never changed his approach or how he calls a game. So everybody knows what they're getting. Everybody trusts it. And why wouldn't they?
I mean, he has some of the best clips and like on those referee things. Like he has the best ones. Like, come on, you! They're awesome.
and with the Boston accent
And the
too.
chirps
That's
he
why I love
gives.
it.
Oh my god. Yeah.
No, I think, and we talked about it. Experience, game count.
Yeah.
Like that's
has
where
to
you
matter.
develop that, right? You develop that. Like now, not everyone's born with it, right? Whatever it is, but through games and through experience and through, learning from people who have been there and done that. That's how you develop that presence and that ability to manage a game.
Question. Remember the girl a couple years ago? Your father read her letter. She was doing some pukey little kids game, and the coach,
And you went, yeah. So
they chased her out of the building, and then I forget the gal's name that ref with us.
yeah, I know who she. Yeah, she.
And so I reached out to her,
Yep.
and we talked a little, and then that other guy, sorry, I can't remember her name, but
Yep.
she's big league now. So, and we went and we skated with her.
Oh, Katie Gay.
Yes.
Yes.
So the point of what I'm saying, so we went and skated with this girl. So she was 14 or 15. I
Yep.
can't remember her name, sorry. But so,
I think it was Braylon King.
yes, that was her.
Yep.
She's really good. So I tried the whole game to get these coaches to bite. And they just wouldn't do it. So there was some circumstance in that game where this girl reacted so perfectly. And it wasn't because Katie or I was there.
Just instinct.
It was just her instinct. So when I was 16 years old, Tom Connors coached Framingham High, ref forever, very well known, very highly respected guy. Mr. Lack in Natick,
Oh yeah.
ref for 10,000 years, right? All his kids played. But those two guys were wicked intense. I remember at 16 years old, I remember Tom Connors challenging me. I remember Lack challenging me. It was wicked intense. You're 16, you're talking to a 50-year-old dude. So what's the difference? Why are the young people now shying away from the responsibility that they're given by the rule book and the jersey within the game? And I don't remember that before. I worked a game with this guy, Gary Nickerson. Might have been his brother, actually. And this parent, we were in West Suburban Arena, Natick. They had the short glass on the side.
Yeah.
This parent was chastising their own kid. Rough. Nickerson went by him one time and told him to be quiet. Went by him a second time and said, last warning. Third time, pulled the guy onto the ice.
No.
Boom, boom, boom. took his shirt off, threw it on him, and left. He never reffed another game.
No.
Awesome.
How many times do you want to do that?
Fearless.
Right?
Now, different time, but what I'm, when you watch all the kids, you listen on your calls and the stuff that people cry about and whine about and don't attack. A few calls ago when everybody was on, I came on late, I remember. And
That was
The
great.
parents.
The parents
The parents
videos.
were yelling
I'm like,
at
what do you
each
care
other,
about the parents?
And the parents were
they're
yelling.
never going to
yeah.
change.
No, they weren't
No.
even yelling anything like profanity. It was just
Nothing.
like
I coached the Metropolitan Junior Terriers, 1983s. I had 6 kids from
Chuck
South
Levin.
Boston, except for the Levins. All the other parents from
The Levins
South
is
Boston, they would hang over the balcony and shriek at me. And the referees,
oh, you had the Carthuses. Oh, it
Carthus,
was over.
everybody. And they were great people,
they're
but
the
they
best.
had no patience for
Because they were probably already
anybody.
sauced.
Matakunis,
Oh, Ralph. Oh, forget it.
So the parents are no different now than they ever were.
No.
Yeah.
And so what do we care about them? We're not going to change that. And so what's that gap, though? Like the point you were making, all this stuff, listening, yes. But what's the gap where kids are just less... they just don't do conflict.
Everyone gets a trophy.
Nobody does
don't- I
conflict.
mean,
That's
but-
what it is.
But we saw how it was done and handled. Like I got to see Jimmy Doyle. in
Jimmy
action.
Doyle.
I got
Two
to
hands
see
better than him.
Right now.
One of my
like,
favorite
none.
days, your father let me work a game with him before, it must have been before the commissioner game that got me not allowed to do games, which was that guy at Canisius who's now at RPI,
Smith.
Smitty.
Yeah,
I don't like
Smitty.
him. He's a piece of crap on the bench. I don't care. Record it. Doesn't matter. That guy started yelling at Durfee.
Yep.
End of the first period, we're in Watertown.
He's probably not wrong though if he's yelling.
No, he was totally wrong. And who was the guy that you guys had work? He always had the hole in his knee forever. Wore the
Oh,
braids.
Al Bundy, Dennis Scholes.
No,
Dennis
not
Schultz?
Dennis Schultz. No, he was a cop or something. He used to say he was a cop. He was the guy who did the Phantom game when I needed a referee that year.
Oh, Eddie Boyle.
Eddie Boyle.
Yes.
Yeah, that was it. So
Oh,
it was
Eddie.
me,
Yeah.
Durfee, Eddie Boyle, and I think we were doing 2-1 because I think Durfee was
Lining then.
lining. And at the end of the first period, Smitty starts giving him some shit. And I'm like, nah, that's not happening. Tell that guy to come over. Like you just said in your other story, come around,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so he comes around. So Durfee comes off. So this is chicken wire, Watertown.
Yeah.
That little dinky closet we had for the
it's
room.
gross, yeah.
And Bentley was dressing over there.
Turn the shower on for heat.
Yeah, that's right. So the guy comes around, and I never yelled at him, and I never swore, but the commish was unhappy with my delivery or my sermon, apparently,
Sermon. That's what it was.
It was a sermon.
You
because
deliver sermon.
I said to Smitty, regular voice, just like we're talking. I said, Smitty, look, I said, number one, before you say anything, you have to trust that we're going to do the best job we can, and that's just the way it is. And he goes, well, I don't trust it. So I said, fantastic. We have nothing to talk about. Now, he had 2 really good players on his team. So, of course, my riff was how he was misusing these 2 centers, a center and a wingman. Didn't use them on the power play. So I did a riff. I don't know what I said, but I know it was pretty good because the kid that just retired from Bentley,
Yeah.
the coach,
Yeah.
it was like his
Soderquist, yeah.
first or second year. All I could see while I was talking to Smitty was his shoulders going up and down behind him. He was laughing his ass off. And then we went in the room. We never swore. We never did nothing. But the commission apparently was in the wings, and he didn't think it was.
I think it was just the whole concept of having controversy in the hallway. I don't think it had anything to do with it.
No controversy. It was just a conversation. And there was nowhere else to go. It was Watertown.
Right.
What are we going to do? Stick 20 people in
No,
a
you pulled
closet?
don't they have a curtain?
There was no
There was
curtain.
usually a curtain.
There was nothing there. Not that year there wasn't. But
After that, there was a curtain.
I forget where we were going before
After
that.
that game, big curtain. Iron.
I
Iron
forget
curtain.
how we landed on that, but I don't
Well,
know.
I think
There's just a
I go
gap.
back to.
There is a gap.
I go back to the it's a societal problem. Everyone gets a trophy. So nowadays, kids don't have to actually work to get anything. And we see it in refereeing. You see it in anything,
You
right?
said no one wants to get better. No one has to get better. They're
Okay,
like,
but
why-
Because
Hold on.
you get the games,
Right.
right? But at the same time, they don't encounter enough adversity.
Okay, but
they
hold on.
don't get told, "Hey, you kind of suck. You got to work
No, I
a
hear
little
you,
harder."
but hold that thought for a minute. Think about that. We're talking about people, kids, whatever. Forget the older adults. The kids who are 15 to 20 something. There's something still amiss in that idea to me because they have the stones to go on the ice in the first place. They have the stones to put on the shirt and assume control of,
the responsibilities you have to
40 people, some older than them, some younger. So somewhere in there, they have the confidence to do that. You can't put that shirt on and go out there and do any game and not have a certain level of confidence. You just can't. So they've already got that. But there's something missing in
training,
their
education.
ability to handle the conflict. And I mean, to me, that's what it is. Their ability to handle the conflict.
Yep.
And in fact, I couldn't have said this a few years ago, but now with some of the stuff I've learned and language, if you really look at what officiating is, whether it's harder in 4-man, I think now.
So. It is. Because
in 3-man, but it really comes down to, if you're the armbands person, it really comes down to leadership. Like you're actually, you have to develop a form of leadership that creates trust factor from two combative groups of 20 with their own leaders, right? So within that, you have to find a way. So how do you, the idea of the trust, and I remember in a call you had a while back, somebody started talking about it. It was probably you or your father. Could have been you too. I don't remember. But the trust thing always leads to, I forgot what I was going to say, but I don't know. It's really interesting to me with some of the stuff I've learned, because you can't say any of these people that are doing games for you, no, they don't lack confidence. Otherwise, they wouldn't go out there.
Right.
Whether they're 5 years old, doing Pee-wee's Might Squirts or junior, but their ability, I think they have to be taught differently. I think the language should change to talk more about leadership. And, I know what I was going to say. They take it personal.
Yes, they take it.
They're not playing a game. That game I did with you. Now, if somebody doesn't know me, I don't like it when a guy says that kind of stuff to me. But, when I was a young person, I know exactly what I used to say.
Yep.
And I know I would say a lot that was not appropriate, but I know that I also said all that in lieu of assessing penalties. Then I was given guidance to shut up and use the rule book. And so that's what we did. And then you learned that it's just business, right? And it's not personal. And so that education game we did, the reason that had to be done is because Coach, that day in Newington, it was totally personal. He was coming for those kids in a way that was so personal, he should have been ejected. I'll never forget, as clear as day. And I remember watching them stand there just going, they didn't know what to do.
Right.
They knew it wasn't right. They just didn't know what to do.
Right.
Which is different than not being confident. And think about how many times you guys have said, just call the rules, call the rules, call the rules.
Well, I think.
How do we close that?
Well, I think it's identifying bad behavior, right, and addressing that bad behavior. Whether it's addressing it by, warning them or calling a penalty. Like the second a coach does this to me on offsides, boom, they got their arm up. I'm going over and going, Coach, we're not going to put our arm up today. You coach, I'll ref. Like if you have a question, I'll come over, but you're not going to show us up and put your arm up again. I go, if you do, expect.
But what
2
level
minutes.
are we doing?
College hockey.
Because at the end of the day, one could argue, well, why do you care if he puts his hand up? Rick Bonus, I remember when I was young.
It's distracting.
To who?
To me.
Then you're not engaged.
I love it.
You're not engaged in the game.
Well, it is disrespectful.
Rick, negative. No, I don't agree with that at all. Rick Bonus, when he was at Maine Mariners, I was a young ref then. That guy wouldn't shut up. Like, he was wild. He would talk the whole game. He would shout stuff at you. He would every time the puck went over the blue line, somebody was yelling offsides and putting their hand up because
I addressed that.
That's just an expression of energy. Unless they said something like impactfully different that impeached your integrity, which
But I'm saying is that.
wanting an offside isn't that?
But that's a progression, right? That's giving them the voice, right? So it starts with that, and then it's every.
But if you
other
warn
call, like
too
now the
much,
question now.
if you warn me, honest to God, if you're reffing my game and I stand on my bench at the blue line,
Yes.
and every time the puck goes over, I say offside and I put my hand up. If you come over to me and you say you can't do that, I'm going to say, are you freaking kidding me? Like, I can do whatever I want on my bench as long as I don't impugn the integrity of the game or the officials.
You're showing us up by trying to tell me that you're challenging my call. You basically
No,
arguing
I'm not.
balls and strikes every time.
I'm not challenging your call.
Every
I'm
time that
standing
call
on a
crosses
blue
the blue
line.
line.
No.
You are
It's not a challenge.
questioning my integrity and
I don't agree with
challenging
that.
what I'm doing.
First of all,
I don't agree with that. I have my own perspective, which I'm entitled to. As a coach of a team, I'm entitled to my perspective. And if I happen to also be a ref and I want to put my hand up and say offside, I mean, that happens all the time. Every game I ever did in the American League, there's 3 guys standing behind me yelling offside, even if I'm already done this and the puck's in the end zone. Like, that's not a penalty.
No, it's not. But what I'm getting at is
What the guy from Cornell used to do to Jimmy Briggs? what Pecknold used to do?
Yeah, isn't that
to
annoying?
Jimmy
Don't you want
Briggs?
that to stop?
No, but it's different. You want it to stop. But the question is, how do you make that stop? Jimmy Briggs had to learn how to make that stop by turning around and saying, knock it off.
Right.
Not by a penalty.
Well, no, I'm not giving him a penalty. I'm warning him. I'm addressing it. I'm not saying I'm going
You
over
can't
the color,
warn,
but-
though. Warn means
I'm
that
just-
something is coming next.
Well, I'm addressing the situation.
How do you create the trust?
It's bad behavior.
Okay.
How do you
Trust me,
create
hey,
the
listen,
trust?
First of all, you
That's
use
what's
one-
missing, I think, the
Use one
trust.
of my favorite sayings: impugn my integrity. You say that to a coach. I said that before, and you just have this glazed over look. They don't know what impugn means.
Right.
I
Second
don't know
of
what
all-
integrity means.
Second of all, no, but
Very, very few.
here's how I handle it. If someone screams across the ice after a call, I'll go over and I'll say, Coach, that's not going to work for me today. There's
Yes.
there's no warning. There's no threat.
Well, that's what
Coach,
I'm talking about.
right.
Shit like that. That's what I'm not.
That's
I'm
not going to
I'm
work
not
for me
giving
today.
them- Yeah.
And you know, I'll come over and I'll answer your questions, but screaming across the ice is not going to work.
But
today.
I bring that
the
back
next,
to my
But the next time it happens, you have to address it.
I'm controlling the narrative,
You can't
not
let them. If you, we say this to kids all the time. If a coach screams across the ice and you don't acknowledge it,
The how. I agree
the how
with
is
you.
you go over and you say,
I agree with you. I had a
this
game.
isn't
One
gonna
of
work.
the early games I had, I think, was probably it had to be the American League because it was still in New Haven. So I forget who the coach was. Nick Fattia was the assistant.
Oh, Nicky.
It might have been Pat Hickey. I remember the game wasn't 3 minutes old, and the play was going on. Both coaches were yelling at me, like all of 3 of us.
Outstanding.
Like nothing had happened yet.
Right.
I just killed play. And I went to both benches and I said, what are you yelling at? Nothing's happened yet. You guys got to relax. And they laughed. And then we just had a face off and away we went. So that's what I'm driving at.
Right.
So we agree, right?
Oh yeah. But it comes down to communication. It comes down to having the ability, and I think the word.
So what we're saying is then a lot of these kids, a lot of these young people, they don't know how to communicate.
Correct.
Well,
because they can't do
communication
it the way you do it.
No.
They can't do it the way I do it, and they can't do it the way you do it, and they haven't figured out who they are enough where they're not taking it personally, where they can go over and say something calmly. Terry Koharski is one of the best ever. Like you know this.
Yep.
He could get mad, and he had this face before he ever said anything. I mean, that guy doesn't. Players loved him, coaches loved him. Some shit would go down. I mean, the face came first,
Yep.
and everybody saw the face, and only the idiots
And the foot.
didn't react to the face.
Yeah.
If he had to drop the bombs always came before the penalty, but then the penalties were severe. Like everybody knew, and
Right.
that was the progression. And so, I don't know. I think back like Grav, Gene Senior, Jimmy Doyle,
Jimmy Doyle.
Turkey, like all these guys that Marty, Ned, Like all these dudes, their method
Slow bleed.
of, yes, their method
Slow bleed.
of, yes, slow bleed, but also their method of handling the conflict that was coming at them, it was never aggressive until everything else failed. Like they gave the stupid test over and over and allowed multiple failures. Who better, maybe Turkey and Jimmy Doyle, who better at not taking it personally?
Jimmy Doyle.
Your old man let me work with him at a game in Yukon. It was Yukon and Arizona. It's probably the most fun I've had except for one other game. Probably the most fun I've ever had doing a game because I never got to work with him at a very high level, other than like summer shit.
Right.
But maybe that's the thing. I don't know. I think that's something that has to be figured out because that's what's missing. You watch all these games on video. I still watch way too many games because I think it's fun and I'm looking for clips for other reasons. And, the idea of there's too much hockey, we can't fix that. The idea of there's not enough guys, we can't fix that.
It's true.
So
Communication is key. I mean,
It's huge.
it's the whole deal.
I've been preaching communication since I figured it out myself. from
But
Andy
some
Van
of that
Helmont.
communication, like I've worked with you guys, obviously. You guys like to talk.
Oh, yeah.
You guys like to go say hi to everybody. See, when I grew up, no.
true.
Yeah, but when I was coming up,
you
no,
never said a word.
no, we didn't do that.
No.
Even that game I did with you, you're over there like saying, I don't want to say hi to anyone.
Right.
I just want to call the game.
See, that's Ryan Sweeney.
Yeah.
Sweeney goes, like, I don't even think he does a lap anymore. He just goes and just stands right at the penalty box.
Amen.
Doesn't talk the fucking word.
Like, I don't want to say hi to anyone. And even in the American League, I mean, when I was reffing in the American League, coaches didn't. They knew you were full of shit. They didn't care if you said hello.
No.
They didn't want to talk to you. They're getting ready for a game. And the only ones who did talk to you were trying to create the angle that would get them the mental advantage.
Right.
So it's all bullshit. Like, I had my kids' team a couple years ago. I didn't talk to any ref. I've told you a million times the experiment I did with Greg Gilbert when he was coaching Worcester.
Yep.
I'm sure I told you that.
Oh, yeah.
American League,
Oh, yeah.
Worcester, Greg Gilbert's the coach. Great guy, great coach. Long, but I had a team then. I forget what age group they were. Might have been a junior team. And it's the first period, and Worcester's up 2-0, and I blew an offside, meaning I missed it. Screwed it up. And they started hammering me. And I don't know why, but the light bulb went on in my head, and I thought, I'm going to see if I can distract just by talking. I paid attention to the game. I'm going to see how long it takes me to distract the entire team from what they're supposed to be doing and get them all to focus on me. The first period ended 5-2. Worcester was down. The game ended like 8-2. They never recovered. For 2 periods, I had 20 players and 2 coaches totally focused on me, the linesman. It was a great experiment.
And they had no idea it was an experiment. That's what's the best
No,
part.
it was fantastic. And roll that to a couple years back when I had a high school team, and we did the opposite because my team was bad. Like, we didn't have a lot of players. How are we going to get advantage? So we said, nobody talks to anybody. No matter how bad the hit, nobody talks to anybody ever. We put the bucket in the room. We had the water. I gave them shit before the game. It took 5 games before, referees, you make a bad call, you have PTSD. We all do it, right?
Yep.
We're already looking for the yell.
Right.
So they didn't come. So he would take the kid to the box, and if it was a good penalty, I'd tell my kid, you can't do it. Never looked at the ref. Can't do it, it's a foul. If it was a shitty call, I'm like, keep doing it. Just do it again, do it again. He'll get comfortable with that level of contact, right? So they could hear that. And so then we went through that season. About the 6th game, I forget the guy. He was a Connecticut guy, but clearly not in a good mood. So I had the player just do a drive-by, whatever he said to him, some bullshit about, smile or whatever, like, we're having a good time. Didn't stop, and the guy looked at him and actually smirked because he got the joke. From then on, and referees, Connecticut only has 10, right? So they all talk. We started to get breaks. They didn't know me as a referee. They just knew that our team was respectful. We didn't say shit to them. And only one time, one of my kids got, like, he was out, concussion. And even then, I went out on the ice, and the two referees, they stood way over here, like on the other blue line. So I did the Lupinella. I went and looked at my player, and then I started walking towards them. And I started waving my hands. But what I was saying to them was, any good restaurants around here? Where are we going to eat? Blah, blah, blah. So the fans all got fired up because they can't hear anything.
Right.
They felt like I was protecting their kid. These two guys didn't move because I wasn't saying anything threatening.
Right.
And they did not connect, my arms going all over the place while saying, where are we going to eat after? So even then,
That's brilliant.
it was really fun. And that whole season, it changed the way the officials went for our team. So I don't know what all that means, but it's the older I've gotten, the more clear communication, yes, but it's not just verbal. It's always been about the body language. I learned that mostly
language, huge.
06, 07, watching all those games, watching you, Chip, Frank, Riley.
I got a PowerPoint on body language I use at camps.
I mean, there's nothing stronger than that. And all these guys, even these junior guys who take it so friggin' serious because they don't really understand what they're there for, those guys aren't deploying any psychological shit because they don't even know what they're doing half the time. That old dude at the Cyclones that we had that day, that guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's not like actually trying to psych out an official to get a call or manage the game. Or I had a team, where were we? A couple years ago when I had the Chiefs team.
Mm-hmm.
We went down somewhere. We were playing some stupid tournament. Our game was at 9:25. These two dudes, I mean, they had the handout. They just wanted the cash every time. I was killing them. But all I said to them for an hour, the whole time, was effort. It's 9:30 at night. Nobody wants to be here. Give some frickin' effort because it matters to my. They didn't penalize me one time, and I was loud because they didn't want to. They were tired. They'd already done like 6 games.
Right. That last
They
one on
just
Saturday
collecting
night,
the check. I'm with you, brother. But my kids don't know. It's their first game.
Yeah.
They want like an honest effort, and they were missing shit that affected
That's
both
annoying,
teams.
yeah.
And so, what do you do with all that? I have no clue. But I just wish the kids. I wish everybody would listen more and be a little more prideful about how they execute
Pride is huge.
and what they want to learn.
Well, care what you do and do it to the best of your ability.
Right.
But again, it goes back to I don't have to do it to the best of my ability because I'm going to still get my prize. And who cares? I
Did
don't
you
have
ever
to
know
be
Jimmy
better than
Yancey?
you.
I bet your father knew him.
No.
Jimmy Yancey.
Jimmy
The name
Yancey
sounds familiar.
When I was a young dude, like I started ref when I was 13. So 13, 14, 15, 16, working in Natick. Mr. Yancey, honestly, I mean, he was African-American, reffing back then.
Back then, yeah.
He took abuse I've never seen anybody take. Not anybody on your calls. I bet your old man would remember
He
him.
probably does. Yeah.
I learned more from that guy on how to conduct yourself. And I always remember him because he had to handle stuff that we would never. And I actually never saw that. The only people he ever yelled at were kids, like, bantam age kids who were just rotten, in these games, right?
Yeah.
But as an adult, I remember him always very vividly. I mean, that's another guy. Like, all these people that we had, but we wanted to know, their secret.
Right.
I don't know. I don't get the difference, Even in the pros, like, all the guys running it, I mean, all the guys I had supervisors, you had some Matt Pavlich, like Hall of Fame guy, Ashley, John D'Amico, Lewis.
Brian Lewis was my boss in my first year in the Coast League. He was great.
You had
I
Andy,
had Andy Van Hout on. in the
McCrary at camps. We had Jerry Pateman, all these guys.
Gary, yeah, he was
like,
great.
we had all these guys. I don't know, all the guys I was around, you were just hungry to get the info.
Well, that's when I see like Paul Stewart or Brian Murphy or any of those guys. Like whenever I'm gonna rake with them, like I sit there and pick their brain. It's like how do you not? You can learn so much from just listening to those guys, and they give you information. You're not even asking for it. They'll just ask you a question while you're sitting there, like, hey, what do you think of that? Oh,
The thing that's not different now, I mean, to me, what's not different is, is the game played differently? Yeah, sure, whatever. It's still 20 guys on the side. They're still humans. They have all the same
still inside glass.
Emotional, mental, bullshit stuff. It's all the same. So it all comes back to people management, how you communicate, verbally, not verbally, your personal confidence. Yes, you have that when you go out there, but then there's that piece that elevates you, which how you deal with conflict. Do you react to it aggressively right away? Do you warn? When do you not say anything? When do you not have rabbit ears? When do you not listen? How much do you not listen? I remember there was a guy, Larry Floyd. Did you ever have him?
Nope.
He was in the minors. He had been around a long time. I'll never forget. He was playing with the San Diego Gulls, and I got to remember how this went, but he got torched. He was the last man back. He got torched, and the team scored. And I don't remember what he said. Something to me. I remember I was standing on the middle of the blue line. Whatever he said to me didn't hit me right. I said something about how he just got torched. And then, but I knew as soon as the sentence was half over, I'm like, you're just going to have to take the beating. And I took a beating from that guy for it felt like 5 minutes, but it was probably like a minute or whatever. But I remember that because that was what really taught me to just shut up.
Yeah.
Right? Shut up. And I wasn't there to critique the play unless, like the Cyclones guy, it was just a question. Smitty, it was just a question.
It's a question.
I coach. I have opinions. But refereeing wise, that taught me to shut up. And then use the rules, but also understand, game within the game. It's not personal, all that shit, which I don't know. You watch these young guys, some of them are really good.
Some of them are.
Dude that we had the serendipity with Bert in the locker room.
Yes.
I mean, he's really good.
He is good.
He's very talented, but his approach is so not where it should be.
And I really see him as he could be a good referee. He really could be. And he lines in college, but it's communication, and he just has trouble with it. And some people just don't like somebody's face or how they mannerism or too quiet might be, wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, but you know what I wonder about him? Because I did watch him referee.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, and it makes you wonder. You know how when, I can remember when I had early sales jobs, and you listen to all the gurus and you start trying to sell shit, and the only thing you don't do is be you, which is really what makes you a good salesman, right? You try all this other language and shit and everything, and you fail because
you're not you.
Everybody can feel that you're just a fraud until you find you.
That's comedy. That's the same thing as stand-up
I wonder if
comedy.
that's the thing with that kid.
Yeah, I think it is.
He's trying to figure out, who am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to talk? He's obviously probably personally not confident as he wants everybody to think, so it changes how he speaks. Right? It makes him super aggressive when he shouldn't be. I've been there.
Right.
You've probably been there.
I've been there.
Right?
Yeah.
So I wonder how we do that. Because there's just a ton of it. And, I don't know what makes kids interested to referee anymore. Honestly, the few that have reached out to me for some reason.
Yep.
There was a kid on my UConn team, Matt, who reached out to you guys a couple years ago.
Yep.
And I don't know. You'd think that kids would dig it, but maybe because there's no clear path
I go to these
know.
junior teams before the season. Every year I go to 3 or 4 or what have you, and I try to sell the sizzle. And there's 70 kids there. I get like 2 that even like
What's the
think
sizzle?
about it. Try to sell referee. I try to sell the money, the opportunities, the responsibility it gives you. You grow up a little bit. You make some dough. It beats flipping pizzas for slinging pizzas for how many hours, and you can be making $300 before noon on a Saturday. So it's like, do you want to go work on your craft, work on your skating, or do you want to just go and flip burgers for a couple hours,
or stay at home and play
just collect?
World of
And
Warcraft
hockey's
or whatever.
they don't have to
No.
work anymore because they're mommy and daddy.
I got to bring this story up because it's one of my favorite stories with you, from a hockey rink. We were doing a game in Marlboro, a summer tournament. This is 1,000 years ago, and the coach says to me, "Why didn't you call it? You saw that." And I said, "How do you know what I saw?" And he goes, "I know you saw it." I go, "What, do you got a crystal ball back there? You're going to tell me what TV shows I like?" And the guy said, "I don't watch TV, I read." I just turn around. He slides over and goes, "Put someone in the box." And the guy goes, "For what?" He goes, "You just told my partner he can't read." I like that. The guy was like, "What?" And I didn't even know why he gave him a penalty. I go, "You just bench the guy?" And you went, he insinuated you can't read.
I like that.
It was one of my favorite moments. And I was just like, now that is just absolute brilliance right there at work. That was that and the paintbrush story, but that's
You remember
not at a hockey
Jimmy
rink.
Brown?
Jimmy Brown?
Yeah. I remember I worked a game with him. It was a long time ago, and we were doing something at BU. And
Rowdy!
I remember I had just done American League or something, and whatever happened, it was probably a high school game or something.
Okay, that sounds about right.
And I think I called I think I gave a guy like 4 minors.
And then you get a game misconduct or something, right?
No, just the 4 minors,
Oh,
because
the
we
4
didn't want to throw him out. We just wanted to give him it was something totally odd and weird. But he used to tell me about he just loved that. I don't know why. It was kind of like your story. I always think of him.
So there was one story I brought it up. Didn't tell the full story, but it's one of those we kind of did it on Donnie's story about my old man that you're like, oh, that's gonna be made up.
Oh yeah, with the helicopter.
With the helicopter,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So my father landed on Loudon in a helicopter with Don Garcia, but I was like, I don't believe you. So it's kind of like that Lake Placid story you guys had in the pizzeria. I love hearing that story from your perspective because it's like, oh, my father tells that story. Oh, yeah. And then it's like, and then you hear him tell it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that's
You need help? No, I'm good.
Yeah, that's
I was a young person. That was a great story. So it had to be the Harbor Wolves team
Yeah.
because it wouldn't have been the Wolves at Lake Placid. So it had to be the Harbor Wolves team. They were staying in my room because they always got rooms.
My father and Doyle, right?
Yep. Your father and Doyle. And it was his birthday.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And it was a blizzard. We're in Lake Placid. And, of course, there's only the pizza joint. So we go down to the pizza joint, and there's teams in there, and there's tons of people. And so we're waiting for the pizza. We're standing over here, me and Doyle. Dad's kind of with us, but he's kind of milling around, whatever. And then they say some name. So Gene thought it was his pizza. So he slides up to the pizza place there, the little counter, and, asks, and then this big, huge, tall dude says something, Guinea.
You can't get nothing right.
So I'm standing there with Jimmy. We're just there's a tall round table. We each have a beverage. And I do remember Jimmy goes, "Watch this." That's all he says. But he didn't move. He didn't do anything. And Gene does this thing. It was right out of TV. Not like he's going to hit anybody or anything like that. He's just... And then he gives the guy... What'd you say? He gave him the stupid test.
Yeah.
And the guy totally failed.
Said it again.
And whatever he was holding, he put down. Now, the guy was 6'4". Gene is Gene. He came swinging around. He knocked the guy down, one punch, knocked him out, and then they just beat him out the door. They, meaning Gene's 2 hands and his 2 feet, and that was it. So I'm watching. I was a young kid. I'm like early 20s. I'm watching. I'm like, Jimmy, don't we do something? He goes, no, he's fine. He's got it covered. He's got it covered. And so the guy ends up in the snowbank. Gene comes back in, walking back in, gets the pizzas, says, come on, just walk. So we walk out the door. Cops are coming. Sirens, everything's coming.
And it's Lake Placid. It's not like it's a big
No, Lake
city.
Placid. Yeah. Cops are coming. We just get in the car and drive away. And that was it. And then the next morning, they're on the ice, and the team that was in the bar was Philly. And they got like a standing ovation. That was the team that they had first the next morning. So they got a standing ovation from the team.
Oh, that's excellent.
It was the coolest thing ever. I never seen anything like that. Nah, he's got it covered.
You got it covered.
Not even a twitch by Doyle. Not even a twitch. I love that story.
Seen that movie before.
Oh, yeah.
I never saw it before, but that was the first time. But it was very quick. Very painless.
Salty, yeah, he just
Yeah,
yes,
you don't see that in Dover.
he hits first, asks questions later.
Yeah.
No, you don't see that in Dover. Nope. I remember when he took me to the Star Wars bar.
Oh, Kelly's, yeah.
Kelly's.
Yeah, Kelly's.
Oh, yeah.
Ah,
First
for-
time Gene took me to Kelly's.
Beer and a beating.
Beer and a
Sometimes you don't
beat?
get the beer.
The beer's not guaranteed.
First time Gene took me to Kelly's, I remember we left at like 1:50 a.m. And I picked up the Globe the next day, and a guy walked out the front door at 2:10, took a bullet in the head. I called Gene. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing there? He's like, no, you were fine because that guy, he messed up, drug deal, whatever. He owed a guy money. You're fine. You were safe.
You were safe.
Yeah. Yeah, Dover kid. I didn't totally get that.
Yeah, you had your back up against the wall and you looked at the door. You didn't. Yeah.
I remember walking in that place. Everybody knew I wasn't from Southie.
Oh yeah.
The record skipped.
And Gene said, nope, he's good. He's with me. And then everybody went back to normal.
I used to go in there. It
was crazy.
So my father would bring me in there when I was like 19, 20, right? So like I got a little cocky when I was 20, and the guy Tommy knew I wasn't 21 yet. So like I walked in there one night with a couple of friends, and I wasn't with my old man. See ya.
Right out the door.
He wasn't having that.
No, it's really crazy. I mean,
Yeah, good times.
it's just, Dennis Scholes, you mentioned him before. Like, so many people. I was thinking when you guys started doing this, like, I know I sent you like a list of, there's 1,000 people you could have on here that, the stories are great, but I tried to mention a lot of them as we went through because
Yeah, I saw Marty a couple weeks ago.
So
Marty Demers.
impactful.
He wants to get on here. He has a ton of. What a career he's had.
best of his generation,
Yep.
as far as I'm concerned. I keep writing the American League to get him in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, that would be awesome.
He should be in.
He should be.
deserves
Frank
it.
Murphy should be in. Best of his generation. The guy did, I think Frank did maybe 4 finals. When
That's impressive. He
that's
was
not
hungry.
the way it was. Frank
No.
was really
Like,
good
they traveled him too to a couple, didn't they? They go
Yep.
just like a local guy. Like,
Yep.
they traveled him
because he was that good.
that good. Yeah.
So
He was awesome to work with because like if you had a scrum, like those scrums got a little fucking hairy sometimes, and he would always come up to you with 1 or 2. He'd be like, "Hey, you're taking 12." Like no, it didn't matter. Whatever he said, fucking went. Like
Spanish sent me a hat that I still have. It's a white golf hat. It says TFG on it, which stands for Too Far Gone, which came from a game I did with Frank at it was a Wolfpack game.
okay.
Kevin Collins was there, and there was a play, and we didn't agree. I forget what we didn't agree on. It might have been face-off placement or something. But I'll never forget because that's where the hat came from. And the story, still, those guys know it even better. But I just remember the punch I got from Kevin because Kevin came in and he actually started yelling at Frank for listening to me. Because I was wrong. And Kevin was so mad, he wouldn't even look at me. All he said was, forget this fucking guy. He's too far gone.
Too far gone.
Yeah. That was it. Never forget it. That hurt so badly.
Too far gone.
Too far gone. And that was the same season.
He is not. He doesn't hold back.
Oh, no, he didn't hold back.
Holy
No.
shit.
That was the same season at the very last game. I don't know who it was. This guy walked up to me, last whistle, and he gave me like the doughboy. in my stomach. The player.
Stick.
Yeah, and he just whispered at me. He goes, "You're just a fat fuck," and he gave me and I was like, all in the same moment. I'm like, "Oh my God, he's right." And
He thought you were gonna fight him. You were like,
no, he just
Not
kept
wrong,
moving.
dude.
No, it was a total drive-by. Game was
Yeah.
over, season's over, and he just gave me the "you're a fat fuck," and he was gone. And I'm like, "Oh, that hurt too," because he was right. And then that summer, I lost like shitload, 30 pounds. Came back and had another great 6 years. It was good, but
That's awesome.
I don't know what made me listen to that guy, but he was right. That was a rough season. Yeah, too far gone.
Too far gone.
Frank got yelled at for listening to me. Ask him. He'll tell you the
That's
story.
great. We
That
He's
is
got a whole
freaking
different
outstanding.
perspective. Yeah.
That is outstanding.
Yeah.
Well, we've. I think we're too far gone.
Yeah, I said 2 hours. I'd be shocked.
This might be a two-parter.
Yeah.
Well,
We might have to be a to be
it
continued.
was, I mean, it's really fun, actually. And so
We'll definitely have you back on.
there's, you could do a whole different kind of thing talking about whatever, but I appreciate you guys having me on.
Oh, thanks
It's a
for
lot of fun, and I hope you keep doing this because I think it's going to, the conversations you're going to get out of it, I don't even think you know yet, but it's so good.
Nice.
There's so many people you can get and perspectives.
There's
and-
coaches, administrators, referees, also I saw. So you like this? I saw Coach Schaefer down in Florida at the coaches meeting by the pool. I had my hat on, and he's looking at it, and he's like, "What the hell's Chirping Zebras?" I go, "Coach, my podcast." I go, "You got to come on." He goes, "Oh, I'm coming on that thing."
I know he's retired now, but you should have Coach Colgate on.
Oh,
And
Donnie Vaughn. Yeah,
call him on the
yeah.
carpet for his wretched, awful behavior in 2006 and 7.
You know what? Donnie Vaughn.
Wretched, awful
Wretched.
behavior.
He was one of the only coaches that
No
season-
respect for that guy.
Well, hang on. I'll give you a little bit.
And yes, I did tell him anybody can win 250 if you hang around long enough. Anyone.
He was
No
one of the only
respect.
coaches that year that I had a call and we had it back and forth, blah 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 blah. We go in between periods, and I come walking off the next period. It's at Colgate, and he's standing in front of the door waiting for me. I'm like, what the fuck? And he goes, "Hey, I just want to let you know I just watched that. You were right." I go, "Whoa, I was right. Come on!" I shook his hand.
I don't ever remember dealing with him. I'm
I
sure
do.
he had dealings.
I do. And
I had
he,
dealings with everyone in
He
that
had
league.
just come back from not being the coach, sabbatical or whatever. His team was not constructed for the rules as they
did
were
get a
being
lot of penalties.
applied.
Yeah.
His team was big and slow, and his demeanor towards the officials in general was very poor. There was a couple games where he was totally outside himself. And, I mean, we've all been there. I don't know him as a person. I just know him as a coaching person. And as a coaching person, nah, not cool.
Fair enough.
But yeah, keep doing this because have all those guys on. And there's so many perspectives to be delivered and received
Yes.
that could have a lot of impact,
That's what we're trying to do. I mean,
But we have a really good one coming up. It'll either be the next one or the one after. Frank Simonetti from the Bruins, who's leads
I
up the
remember
Bruins
him.
alumni.
Yep.
He's coming on with Captain Ryan Crowley, a former Navy SEAL who's the founder and president of the Warrior for Life Fund. And they just signed on with the NHL. So an agreement, NHL and the Warrior for Life Fund. So they're coming on in the next episode or two. Really excited about that one because
Yeah,
that's going to be good. And just how hockey is just, I mean, it
He's
can be
not a hockey
therapeutic.
person. He's a BC High person. But if you want to talk to somebody about all the things we were trying to figure out, Nick Lavery.
oh, Nick, I graduated with him. He was in my grade, yeah.
He talked to my team a couple years ago.
Yeah, you told
we
me
did
about
a
him.
Zoom.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
gotta get him. I gotta
I
reach
mean-
out to him. Yeah,
He's one of the most impressive people.
it's incredible his story. Like
Yeah.
he was just recognized at the Celtics game. I
Yeah.
think, yeah. I went to BC High with him. Yeah.
The conversation and everything that he espouses from his experience totally applies to everything that has to occur.
Interesting.
It's all personal because
Yeah.
it's all mental. He would be a great person to have. Totally outside the box, but
We've had a few, yeah.
We have every intention of keeping this going.
Thanks for having me.
Episode
Really
18.
Well, let's get some sponsors. We'll keep it going.
Sorry.
We could use a sponsor or 6, but that we do have one great sponsor, the Referees Crease.
Yep.
And we also have a wonderful place that we do this at, which is AOA Studios, and they're awesome here. So we're very fortunate in that regard. Very fortunate to know people like you, Luke, and have, over the years, you're someone that we both have, not only a massive amount of respect, but also a massive amount of just, love and happiness when you're around.
We've had a lot of fun.
Oh, we
can
have.
say.
I mean, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for me through my career, on and off the ice. I mean, you've been a mentor to me since I was probably like 15 years old, just watching you when you were a trainee and then just growing and then working for you, working with you. Those nights and those games we used to work, in the American League, and then afterwards,
I love
going out to dinner or even just sitting down. I remember there was nights where we would sit in the Hartford garage, and we would be at your car or my car, and we'd put our bags down and we'd just have a conversation for an hour. And then you go, why the fuck are we standing here? Let's go across the street.
Yeah.
And then we go across the street for an hour. And, and it was just, it was all just talking shop, talking hockey. And all those times and all those moments I've always cherished. And I thank you for those.
Tell you did one of the best things you could have done for his career. His first game in college hockey D1, you put me on the lines.
It was the RPI
remember that.
scrimmage.
The RPI scrimmage.
I went up and did the blue and white game. You go up and
Is that when your father was in the rafters?
No, that was the BU game. That was the first. That was the first game.
I have a great picture from
that. That was a great hockey game. I've told that story on here with
I decided to use you that year because of 2 games I did with you in Hockey Night in Boston. When you were, I don't even know how old you were.
I was probably like 18,
you were just,
19, yeah.
You were so everything that you would have learned being a Southie kid from your old man.
Never took shit from anybody.
No, but you just had a different way. I thought then, not that I knew I was getting that gig, but
right,
because I'd never really seen you work. It was kind of Kevin Curtis-ish, but
well, you put me in the
were
lines,
really good.
and that completely changed the
I don't remember
trajectory of his career.
Yeah,
Most fun you had in a car ride ever.
I laughed for 6 hours in a car.
Yeah, RPI. So
now I laugh on an hour ride up here.
That's cool. Well, thanks again. Still a cross check too, by the way.
still a cross check.
Still a
We'll
cross
get
check.
that video. It's still a cross check.
Coming.
I love it.
So far gone.
So make sure you check out our website, chirpingzebras.com, where you can get cool merch like this. You might have saw our promo video for it. We have trucker hats, hoodies, quarter zips. We got it all.
Polo's coming soon.
Check that out. And also like and subscribe, as always, on YouTube. We really appreciate that. We're up over 400 now. Yep. So we're up and climbing. And also find us on all the social medias, Instagram, Facebook, the TikTok. We're on the TikTok. Check us out there. And also give Frankie Chirps a follow. He's on Instagram himself.
Give AOA Studios a follow, too.
AOA Studios a follow. Absolutely. And me, Mark Riley Comedy. Always want to get a follow there. So,
Ref's Crease, why the fuck not?
Why not? I tag you. But anyway, episode 18 coming to a close finally. We started it on Thursday. It's now Saturday morning. And
Sorry.
No, it's all good.
No, we're prepared for this.
We had a blast. We'll see you next time right here at Chirping Zebras. We're out.